We've got flags and banners, and if you mind your manners, we might even get to standards and what they represent. So just take my voice's hand and we'll both try to understand how this vexilla logic podcast could be flagged for content. Flagged for content.
What's up, Vexheads, and welcome to episode 61, part 2 of Flagged for Content. It's the only podcast where the host got married a couple weekends ago and had to take some time to do a bunch of other stuff that wasn't editing his podcast. Anyway, all that to say, I do apologize for this one being way later than I said it was going to be. I think I said it would be up the same week, and that was clearly wrong. Speaking of things that are wrong, it would be wrong for you to not order flags from Flags for Good, which is our show's sponsor. You can find all sorts of political flags there, regardless of what way the election goes today. I'm sure they will have some good ones either way. Anyway, use code FLAGGED4CONTENT when you check out. It is flagged for, like the number, digit, for whatever content, and yeah, you'll get a sweet, I think, 10% off and kick a little bit to the show as well. Speaking of the election, I am releasing this on election day, hopefully, and if you haven't already done so, if you are an American, please get out and vote. Please go out and vote the correct way. I think you know what it is. I don't think I have to say it. But anyway, I will be working the election today, so thoughts and prayers and all that good stuff. The only notes that I had to go into before this one is that this was taped a little bit before NAVA 58. There's a bit near the end where we say, hey, I hope everyone comes to NAVA 58. So I hope you came to NAVA 58. If not, please come to 59. It's in Seattle. I have the flag for that, thanks to Adib Al-Talib, and I will show that one soon in an upcoming video. Okay, I did already say, sorry for the delay. I had a wedding. I got married, and I wanted to shout out the folks that came. Curtis Tarver, who's been on the show a couple times, Tara Stark, who's been on the show and did design the Keystone flag, and Michael Green, who has, again, been on the show. You're seeing a theme here. And is the proud owner of Flags for Good. Thank you guys so much. It was an honor having all of you there. That aside, let's see. Yeah, join the Discord and the Patreon. I say that every week, or, well, every, I guess, 9 weeks whenever this show comes out. But do join the Discord. It is where we have a lot of really good conversations. And as I mentioned near the end of this episode, it's where a lot of the questions come from as well. So, and the Patreon just always has some good bonus content. So, worth checking out. There's like a $2 level if you want to do that. And yeah, I think the last note I had was one that bears repeating, which is happy, in quotes, election day. Let's hope it's not the last one we ever have. All that aside, I had a great continuation of a conversation with Brian Cham, who is a joy to talk to and who knows his way around a flag and a flag committee as well. This episode mostly focused on his 6 deal breakers of bad flag design. We put it up against the good flag, bad flag rubric, a few other considerations as well. It's mostly about that, but there's a little bit of other stuff thrown in here as well. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one. And again, please vote. Please vote. Here we go. All right, and we are back, part 3, more with Brian Cham. And that was a fascinating walk through the Minnesota Flag Commission, like the ins and outs of all of that, what it's like to be on one, which, I hope to be on one even like half that size someday. And as mentioned, we do have some listener and viewer questions. We got to a couple of them, but I'm just going to walk us through. I think there's 3 that we haven't gotten to. And I'm going to start with this one. This is from Wallaby04. This is Evan Stewart, who is in our Discord and has been a past guest on the show. He says, if you can ask him why the North Star flag was cut so early. I get that may be a sensitive topic, so it's fair if it's unmentioned. So, hey, tell me if you want me to cut this, but do you know why it was cut so early? Any insight on that?
Well, by the time we came in with our full collaboration as advisors, 6 finalists had already been chosen, and that had been done by individual voting members of the commission.
Okay.
So there wasn't any, central reason why that flag wasn't chosen for the finalists. It would have just been up to the individual choices of those voting members. And by the time we were involved more deeply, that decision had already been made, had already been publicized. So they weren't really in a position to revive that selection.
Okay. Yeah. Fair and simple. Trying to think of the order on these last two. Let's go with let's start with JG Davis 78, who I gather is not the biggest fan of the flag, but they say with so many decent designs to choose from, what were they thinking? Why? So basically just somebody who doesn't love the final design. What do you say to the haters?
Well, I will share something on my screen for the haters.
Okay. Is it just going to be a giant middle finger graphic? Like... Or wait, you guys
I'll be a bit more respectful than that.
Okay.
So here are the results of the 2022 survey that we did for New American Cities.
Very
and here
familiar with these.
Lowest rated flags. As you can see, we all rated them. Our members all rated them on average an F grade. You can see they're very complicated. They've got logos and text everywhere.
I still want that Springfield Township one. I'm not gonna lie. I still want that.
Oh, that one with it's almost very cartoony, isn't it?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Michael Green and I have plans to go there and get one. Someday. Anyway.
That'll be nice. Yeah, that'll be nice.
Continue with your point.
Interesting souvenir. Right. Well, I can't make you, like the final flag if that's not what you genuinely enjoy.
Right.
However, the reason why I'm showing you obesity flags is I just need to remind you that when you have flag commissions, and they're often made up of members who are not vexillologists, and if vexillologists are not involved, then they often end up with a selection like one of these.
Yes. And as I mean, kind of to that point, sorry to butt in, but kind of to that point, that one that you had before as a one that could have potentially won, that one with the little green land stripe. Yeah, I mean,
Greenway.
Cautionary tale type stuff.
Exactly. I brought that up, just to show like the impact of our involvement. And even if you're not 100% aligned with, the way the process went or the way the final flag was chosen, at least I hope we can agree that we saved it. We saved Minnesota from having something like this, or something like that cautionary tale that I showed with all the ways on it. So that is what I will try to show to any of the haters. At least we agree not to have something like this.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. And, and all flags are going to have haters. I guess like if you live in a municipality or somewhere where you have a bad flag, get out and change it. That's all we can say. And then, all right. So I think the final question on that topic is from grant.duh.coda. That is Coda. They're a big fan, big listener. I met them working at map store in Seattle. I'm not sure if they want me to say or not, but yeah, they work at a very cool map store in Seattle. Anyway, I'll stop gushing, but they asked, what is the hardest part of being in a design committee?
Well, Coda was actually one of the members of the Never 59 flag design committee that
Right.
I
Yeah.
was chaired. So I think we have a bit of experience there.
Yeah.
I think that went along very smoothly because we're both vexillologists.
Yeah.
We had a very good sense of what would make a good flag. When it came to the a more substantial, a wider ranging commission, I think being part of the design team itself, that went quite smoothly as well. I think the main challenge was when we reached out back um, to the wider commission. Um, there's often very little consensus, and it can be very hard to get everyone on the same page or come to a decision about specific flags,
Yeah.
get them all aligned on the same process,
Right.
and
Right.
that's the sort of thing where um, the head of the commission was really instrumental in encouraging everyone to get aligned, um, telling them how important it was to get something for the deadline, um, encouraging people to um, come to decisions together, even if it wasn't what they wanted 100%. Um, that's the only way that you can get a real decision on a really great flag. Otherwise, you just go round and round in circles, which is honestly, to be honest, that is something that that can happen in these sort of commissions. At some point, the disagreements need to come together and
Yeah.
become something productive.
For sure. And given that you are, I mean, I can't say where, but and I've hinted at it a million times this episode already, but like I am going to be part of a design committee that you're heading. Again, we won't mention specifics, but like, do you find so you have headed design committees and you've been a part of them? I'm just curious, and this may be a dumb question, but I know I've variously liked being in charge and liked being not in charge with certain jobs. Do you have a preference as far as leading a committee versus being on one?
Well, when it comes to vexillology, I'm always happy to be in both positions.
Yeah.
I think being the head of the commission has a lot of advantages that I can bring everyone on the same page uh, and get them all aligned in the discussion together,
Sure. Yeah.
which is what I do in the flag design forum all the time.
Right. Right.
I do that. I discuss it while I'm working on designs in real time. It's really good to get to encourage everyone to contribute their ideas and try out different things, get feedback. I do enjoy that part of it as well.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, I think we can move on from Minnesota. With this last little segment that we've got here, I want to go into I think what most people know you for the most, other outside of the Minnesota stuff. And that is your 6 deal breakers of bad flag design. So I will go ahead and just throw it to you because you can explain them better than I can. But take us on a little bit of walk. Okay, yeah. You've got them pulled up here. Yeah, take us on like kind of a short little walk through what these are and how you came up with them.
Well, so the 6 deal breakers of bad flag design are a list of 6 factors that can make or break a flag design in the public opinion. So this is based on analysis of my home country's unsuccessful flag referendum from 2015 and 2016. The public had a lot of commentary on the designs, and I and another vexillologist collected a lot of these and I identified the common themes behind why the public were rejecting a lot of the fireless design.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the 6 that we came up with, and I presented this during a previous NEVA conference as a way of giving them lessons on, future flag design efforts, so that they don't fall into these traps.
It's very
so
good. Y'all should go watch it
Oh.
if you have access to it.
Yeah. The first one looks like a logo, not a flag. This is something that I've seen a lot in American city flag designs as well.
Oh yeah.
looks like a souvenir, not a flag. That one's kind of similar, but it's more about the symbolism being something very informal. I can tell you that in Minnesota's like design submissions, we did have some that were quite based on like specific sports team symbolism, and we were aware that's going to end up looking a bit
Or
informal, like a souvenir.
certain dogs, certain golden retrievers.
That as well. Yeah. And the design on the top right is the final alternative flag that we had in the referendum, and that illustrates those first 2 points. Looks like a logo and looks like a souvenir. People, people did not feel like it was very flag-like in its composition.
Mm-hmm.
The next point is mystery symbolism. So that's when the design is too abstract that no one can really understand what it is, what it means, or how it relates to the place that they're in. So the design in the bottom left is another one of the finalists that fell into that track. It's something that people really resonated with, but only once they had read full explanation, or it was a complete mystery. They didn't understand how it related to the country at all.
Yes.
The next point is designing for yourself. So every person has their own preferences on what sort of symbols, what sort of colors, what sort of design theme should be on a flag for their place. And if you lean too strongly into that, then you will limit the public resonance of that design, because it's not going to appeal to people who want other things in the design. I'm not suggesting you put in everything to appeal to everyone.
Right. Yeah.
Just try to have a bit of sympathy. Yeah, just think about the fact that you're designing for the whole population. You're not designing purely for yourself. The next one is too radical. This is when the flag design is way too different from any symbolism that the public has seen previously. Familiarity is something that is quite important for them to accept a new flag design. And the last one is it's boring, but it works. I know this is one that Ted really objects to. I said simplicity is always good in a flag, and whenever I go through these, flag redesign processes, it is important. Usually the submissions are too complex, and we need to simplify them. But there is a point where they become so boring that no one really gets excited behind it. As you mentioned with the finalist, with the waves that's trying to make you excited, like flags are something that you should feel proud of. You should feel like you're excited to fly it. It should be eye-catching. If you have something that's too basic, then you're not going to get that. I don't have an example here, but if you look in the top left, that's our current flag. And one proposal was just to remove the Union Jack and just leave the Southern Cross on an empty blue field. And that's something that's simply too boring.
Yeah.
It's just empty and bland.
Yeah, it'll again be in the show notes. But if viewers and listeners want to, even just Google the 6 deal breakers of bad flag design, that will bring up, your page where it's hosted, and you can go through like the whole, go through all of it. And I went through as a reread earlier today, and I had somehow forgotten about that one. I had forced it out of my mind, but then once I got to that 6th one and saw it without the Union Jack, I was like, God, I forgot how boring that is. I don't love it with the Union Jack. That's, my preference. I don't love flags with the, the Union up top there, but it's worse without it. Like in that case, anyway.
Yeah. It's too empty.
For sure.
Too boring.
So I was gonna before we get like any further into that, because like obviously there is a little bit more to get into with the deal breakers, but just to kind of bridge the segments, because one of the questions does this, Max from Sweden, who has been a previous guest, as a lot of these folks have, but he asked, He said you could ask Brian if he thinks the whole Minnesota process confirmed his deal breakers or if he learned something new. And that is if he thinks it's applicable on flag redesigns outside of New Zealand, because that's where most of your examples come from. So I was curious, and obviously he was curious to know kind of how you applied that to Minnesota, or if it changed your thinking on it or any of that.
I think that process was a real test of this list, because I wasn't even quite sure how well it would apply. But I think that based on the public reception that I saw, and even the commission's own discussions, these points really did come up again quite strongly. Looks like a logo, looks like a souvenir. This is something that came up during the finalists, but I should, remember I showed you the one that looks like cool logo. Yep. Some people felt the same way, and they made that same sort of comment that looks, like a logo. It looks too trendy. It's not like a flag. Mystery symbolism wasn't really much of a factor, because I think the commission only chose things that they could understand is related to Minnesota. Designing for yourself, that one not so much. I feel like the designs for Minnesota all sort of centered on the same design theme, which is sort of a North Star and some sort of watery representation, rivers and color blue and that sort of thing. Right. I feel like maybe they just have a stronger, visual identity, and there aren't that many options to choose from to us. So the next one, too radical. Again, there may have been some designs that were, way too different to be recognizable, but even then, the commission only chose things that they could understand sort of at first glance. They had a lot to go through. So they only chose things that had, the North Star, some sort of blue. And that's something that, those are both things that are quite recognizable, quite familiar to the public. So they got around that. The last one, it's boring, but it works. Funnily enough, the final design that we actually chose, that actually drew some of that exact point. Some people say, well, it looks a bit too bland. That's why some people prefer the versions with stripes on them. So that's just a case where we had to make a judgment call about, how far is too far in terms of simplification. Right. So we felt that with the unique shape of Minnesota on there, as well as the two blues, which is a very distinct part of any U.S. state flag.
Give it
having
that.
Two blues, covering the entire canvas. We felt that made it, interesting enough that you can still, that you would still be how to fly it. It would still be eye-catching. And as you can see, as I've shown you on the one of the previous slides, you can see it even on a tiny pin, like on someone's jacket, and even that got people riled up. So I think it did do its job there, even though it was quite simple. So I think a lot of what I saw in Minnesota did some of these points. There's just some more than others because of the different symbolism and the different circumstances there.
Okay, shoot, asked and answered. That's perfect. Yeah, that makes sense. I was wondering, the one sticking point I was thinking that that you might have, that we might have, was number 6 there, the boring but it works thing. Just because that's been like, if I had a criticism, that would be it. All right, so worth moving on. We have talked on our show about your 6 deal breakers before. I don't think it's an episode that I linked you to. It was only about 3 episodes ago. That said, I've taken kind of a long summer hiatus here, so it was also about 2 months ago at this point. There are people that take good flag, bad flag as gospel. There are people that take yours as gospel. There are people that try and rectify both. People like to draw a lot from both. And I'm curious to know where you think the kind of overlap is, where they work together, where they may not.
Yeah, well, I think that the Six Steel Breakers of Bad Flag design really complements the five principles from Good Flag, Bad Flag. And
I
I think
agree.
that people sort of misunderstood some of my work. I mean, to be honest, I think even Ted misunderstands some of this. He thinks that these are trying to almost replace those original
We talked to Ted about it a
principles,
little, yeah.
or he thinks that they're sort of in conflict. I don't think about it that way.
He
I mean,
did mention wanting to fight you and said something about meeting out back of Nava 58, but yeah.
oh boy, I have to keep that in mind. Thanks for warning me. I'll be very careful from now on.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is that an effective flag has four aims. It should be remembered, recognized, reproduced, and resonate. Four R's of effective flag design.
Okay, right.
Its principles, good flag, bad flag, deals with those first three aims. If you make a flag that's simple, no text or seals, few colors, very distinctive, from a visual point of view, then it's very easy to remember, recognize, and reproduce, especially at a distance or when it's hanging or waving.
Yeah.
What I come up with is how you deal with that fourth principle, how you resonate with the public. And I think that there is no tug of war between what Ted K has come up with and what I've come up with. I've put a little diagram at the bottom to illustrate my thoughts here. It's a Venn diagram. On the left is good flag, bad flag. On the right is six deal breakers. There will be flag designs that satisfy the good flag, bad flag, but they don't appeal to the public. That's what we had in New Zealand. That would be sort of on the left side of that Venn diagram. And there are also flags that people in the public might be enthusiastic about, but they are not effective designs. That would be on the right-hand side of that Venn diagram. Some of those city flags, some of those really awful city flags, some of the lower-ranking USA flags, still like those.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that you should, take the six deal breakers, at face value and accept publicly accepted flags at the detriment of good flag, bad flag.
Right.
What I suggest is that intersection in the middle of the Venn diagram, where you are satisfying both the principles of effective design and public satisfaction, can find flags and should find flags that work together to satisfy both of those so that it can be remembered, recognized, reproduced, and resonate. They complement each other. There should be no conflict. And and this is what I try to recommend, as you clarify, as we advise to flag design commissions, this is part of how you select flags and how you should revise flags to end up as best as you can in that ideal zone where you have a design that is as effective as possible on a visual level, but also satisfies public on their level as well. So I don't see it as any conflict, and I think even Ted sort of misunderstands my aim with this. He thinks that I'm sort of trying to override or be in conflict with a good flag, bad flag. I don't see it that way at all. There are only two parts where I think that there could be potentially conflict. And I think it's interesting because in his advice for state city flag redesigns, he's actually updated his presentation to
I know where you're going, I think.
To directly preempt and refute some of the points I've made in Six Deal Breakers, which I honestly see as quite an honor, because it means like he's been bothered by what I said so much. Actually, it's interesting the way he's interpreted it, because he's found this. Yeah, he agrees with the Six Deal Breakers on the level that yes, this is what the public thinks when they evaluate whether they like a flag or not. But he sees that almost as a cautionary tale, something that he's got to warn them against. Whereas I'm seeing it as, okay, you've got to actually take the public seriously and incorporate that feedback and try to make designs that resonate with them.
Right.
So
sure. Seems reasonable.
He specifically advised these commissions and councils not to aim for instant recognition. He says, he tries to say that a lot of people will not understand the design at first glance, but you shouldn't aim for that. You can have something that's a bit more abstract, something that you need to explain. As you make it official and roll it out, people will get used to it. People will understand what it means. And he sort of suggested that if you do aim for instant resonance, then you end up with very generic flags that sort of are very understandable to, almost the lowest common denominator, someone who has no understanding of any of the symbolism and can only understand what they see like at first glance, and that's why you end up with a lot of flags that do end up looking very generic.
Right.
Look like landscape postcards because they sort of feel like they have to go with something that can be understood immediately.
Yeah. Okay, we have mountains, we have a beach, we have etc. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I can understand why he would want to, advise them away from the kind of outcome, because that is, quite generic, and a lot of places have mountains and beaches, and you end up all looking the same because, if you're only restricting yourself to design elements that you'll understand immediately, then they are going to look the same. I can understand why he feels that way. I do feel like that applying the 6 deal breakers is a little bit different for a city compared to a country. So my analysis was based on a country where there is an established set of national symbolism, national colors. There's already a lot of history and culture.
Right.
If you are designing a flag for a city, then you may not have a lot of that pre-existing visual material that people can understand and resonate with at first glance. Yeah. So I can understand, I will admit that, the lesson that I've been trying to advise about, trying to, not making completely mysterious symbolism, may not apply as much to smaller places, smaller cities, and to some degree you will have to come up with something that you will have to explain and have to impose. So I do think I can sort of compromise and meet with them halfway there on that point, because I don't want, there's a great flag, but I don't want every flag to look like this, and they are starting, and a lot of the new ones are starting to sort of look very similar.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah, I'll also note that even for smaller cities, if you do have to impose some symbolism, some meaning, even if it's not immediately understandable, it would be good if it could at least give them a good first impression that leads them in the right direction. If it is something, but I mean, I'm not suggesting you have to directly put in the mountains, directly put in the beach or something. But if it can give them that general feeling, that general vibe, where they feel, oh, this feels like maybe a tropical kind of place, or maybe a place that could be in Texas, then at least put them in the right direction.
You can accomplish that in different, you can accomplish that with color palettes and things that aren't just like a 2D thing of mountains. Like you can there's a lot of different ways to accomplish that. I hear you.
Yeah. So I understand Ted's advice. I would half agree with it, but I would still advocate, even if you can't make everything instantly understandable and instantly resonant, at least give them a good impression that leads them in the right direction, so that they do feel like they can connect with it. And the second bit, again, the same question: how to reconcile simplicity with not being bland. I think Ted sort of misunderstands that point as me advocating for, ignoring the first part of good flag, bad flag, ignoring the part where it says keep it simple, and trying to keep it more complicated. I think some people have also latched onto my advice here. Some people who really enjoy the more complicated designs, complicated to the point where it doesn't even work as a design, and they think I'm trying to advocate for that. The way that I reconcile this, because I do think simpler designs are better, is that there are lots of iconic flags that are very bland, very boring. Um, for example, the flags of France or Italy, plain tricolors, they're quite famous. And the reason why they sort of get away with being so simple is because they have a lot of historical precedent. They've been around for hundreds of years, and these are very
Yeah.
well-known countries. But if you're designing a new flag, you're doing it from scratch, and you will need publicity. You'll need people to get excited about the new flag as it's being designed, as it's being rolled out. So you can't be as simple as like the French flag or the Italian flag. You need to come up with something a little more interesting, not complicated, but a little more
Right.
interesting.
Right.
And I have these two examples to demonstrate how you can be simple, but not too simple.
Yeah, this
So,
is the perfect
yeah.
example. When I came across this slide, I was like, "Oh my god, I never thought of it in this way," and I couldn't have said it better. Yeah.
Yeah. The national flag is Indonesia versus Switzerland. Both of them, in theory, as simple as each other. Both got two colors, two fabric panels, one red, one white.
Yep.
The Indonesian flag is a plain bicolor. It's boring. People don't get excited about it.
It gets confused with
put some
Poland and
headlines.
Monaco and
it gets confused with a few others.
yeah,
Put some
Singapore
headlines.
if if the elements are yeah.
Yeah, it's unidentifiable. It gets blown upside down a lot. No one knows which way up it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
It's generally just too bland and too boring.
Yeah.
Whereas Switzerland, on the other hand, that's still a simple design, but that doesn't fall into the trap of being too boring. It's still very iconic, very recognizable. It works in all these different contexts. That's why I say it's underrated. Works on a Swiss Army knife, works on Swiss Air, works on Toblerone. It's a very striking design. So I think that you can have something that is simple, that fits good flag, bad flag, while also not falling into that trap of being too bland. I think that's a sort of balancing act that we were trying to do with the new flag of Minnesota. Something that is simple, works as a flag, but also is a bit closer to the Switzerland example than the Indonesia example.
Yes, for obvious reasons. Yeah.
I mean, I know people criticize those who were involved with the final design because we removed the stripes and made it very simple, and we made it too simple. But I would just like to say, if we were committed to going that overboard on simplicity, we could have even removed the star and just left it as the shape of Minnesota.
Right.
On the fly. We didn't go that far. So
yeah, if you want to,
trust me, we don't advocate. I don't advocate for that level of blandness. Trust me, we did use our best judgment to keep it within that right balance.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Do you want to go into the designs anymore, or are we better saving that for another time? These last few slides.
Oh, right. I forgot about this one. These are just other questions that people have had about the 6 deal breakers. When does a flag look like a logo? One of the lessons was don't make the flag too logo-like. I just got some examples here. It is a bit subjective. Look with alternative flag. It is quite logo-like in its composition. I mean, I sort of made it to a website banner.
Yes,
the way that it's been composed. But at the same time, it's not like one of the US city flags that are literally just a logo on a bed sheet. But Colfax, Iowa is a sort of borderline example. It's subjective. I think you just need to compare it, side by side with more conventional flags and flags that look very obviously like logos, and just ask yourself where it falls on that scale. Is it close to one end or the other?
Yeah. I think
another question is, do the population's preferences change? So here's an example that I criticized in 6 Deal Breakers, saying,
this was one I've not seen outside of the context of reading the 6 Deal Breakers. And maybe for a good reason, I don't know.
This was to illustrate a mystery symbolism. So the stars in this particular design I represent Matariki, which is a constellation that has significance to the indigenous Maori population. However, at the time that the competition happened, this was very obscure. Like even a lot of people in New Zealand would have had to look up what is this arrangement of stars, what is Matariki. Since then, it has actually this particular occasion has become a public holiday. So now the constellation is a bit more well known.
Oh, okay.
And so people have asked me, like, since then, do you think that this may have a better chance? And do you think you're acting like public resonance or something that's fixed when in fact the public preferences can change over time? I think even with this as a public holiday, I don't think this is still like well known enough or prominent enough to be like the main national symbol. There are still other symbols that have hundreds of years of public resonance, like the silver fern or the kiwi, for example. So this still wouldn't be the strongest design, but I do understand the point. Um, it's the same with the silver fern. A lot of people say, it looks like a logo, looks like a souvenir, but there've been a lot of adoption of this, in non-souvenir and non-sporting contexts since
Right,
then.
yeah.
On the left here is my passport, which has a quite prominent silver fern on the side, and obviously no one's going to accuse the passport of being a sporting related item or a souvenir, something cheesy or informal. So I think that is something that can also change. I'd also like to comment on that screenshot that I've got down at the bottom. I just want to explain what that is. So it's an Instagram video that I saw about a man at his citizenship ceremony. So when he walked on stage, he had a shirt on that had the Indian flag on it. And then as he received his citizenship, he rips off a shirt on stage. Underneath is this one with New Zealand and a silver fern.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was curious that he chose the silver fern as the symbol to represent it, because if the shirt on top has the Indian flag, then underneath would be the New Zealand flag, but actually shows on the silver fern.
Right.
So that's just an example. I know it's just one person, but it's just an example.
No,
to show,
I mean,
how much more prominent that is.
My brain would go to exactly the same place. I think a lot of people listening would, yeah.
I've got various other examples here. Made in New Zealand. There's a logo of the New Zealand High Commission, which is our embassy in London. Curiously enough, our embassy in London actually does not have the New Zealand flag. It does have the silver fern logo.
That is interesting.
And lastly is the New Zealand War Memorial, also in London. These are all my personal photos, and that has a silver fern on a metal pillar. There are actually several metal pillars, but the main one with all the wreaths, the memorial just below, that one has a silver fern.
I wonder if the reason for that being, well, no.
What were you thinking?
I mean, it seems like the flag is much more likely to change than the fern being a symbol of New Zealand is. That's just not going to change. So it makes sense to put something that's a little bit more long-lasting on a memorial stone like that. The High Commission, that's easier to change. You could scrape that off and change it, but the actual stonework on something like that, yeah, I could understand definitely putting the fern on it instead of the flag. Probably not even so much looking forward to the future possible flag change reasons. Just it's I guess it's more enduring as a national symbol, I guess, is most of it. I mean, I doubt the Australia one has the Australia flag on it. Or it may.
I don't think I found that one. Very close to the New Zealand one is the Canadian memorial. And that one, as you'd expect, has maple leaves.
Is this World War One or two?
I think it's just everything.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was because I figured if it was Anzac, then Australia would be right near you, but
no, I'm not sure where that one is actually. Australian War Memorial. Well, I didn't see it in the area when I visited. Only New Zealand and Canada.
Yeah, I'm curious, but I'll just have to go to London.
Yeah, let me know when you're here.
Will do. Yeah, I honestly, I've only been twice, and the last time was in like 2006. So it's been a minute.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh,
Overdue for another visit.
yeah.
That was the other question we already answered. How well do these apply, in the American context? I put Utah in there because I actually did see some of the comments look very similar.
Yeah,
some people felt the
a lot of discussion about 2 logo like on that one for sure.
Logo like there's the central element with the beehive, the hexagon, the ring, the sky. That looks could look a bit logo like. I don't think I'd vote for Utah as my favorite. I was involved with the Utah flag design a bit, but not as strongly as Minnesota.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, in all these cases, you just have to ask yourself, do you feel like this is an improvement on the previous seal on a bed sheet? And, once you think about it in that perspective, you stop really nitpicking all these new designs. So I can still appreciate both of these.
Yeah, in both cases, it's a no-brainer, yes.
Yeah. And this is just the last part of deal breakers presentation. So out of those 6 deal breakers, you can sort of flip them around to turn them into positives and apply these as lessons for what you should do in a flag design. And so from looks like a logo or looks like a souvenir, you come up with that archive test. Would you believe it if this design came out of an archive 50 years ago? Mystery, symbolism, and too radical. Again, you can ask, would the average person be able to recognize or resonate with it instantly, even if it weren't explained to them? Of course, that's a bit that kid, disagrees with. But I think for a country level, where you already have established symbolism, I think that would work. And the last part about designing for yourself, that's just the part where you ask yourself if you are appealing to all the different groups, not to include everything for different groups, but just whether the design is appealing only to one particular population, or whether it can really represent everyone. And then, with those sort of lessons together, then you get a design that's really going to resonate with everyone. And these are the designs that we came up with as a way of addressing the feedback on the New Zealand finalists and coming up with our own flag designs that we felt like would be even stronger designs, both from a vexillological point of view, but also from a public resonance point of view, because it's incorporating the principles of both of those things. But before I explain this, I mean, what are your first thoughts on these designs? Does anything stand out to you?
Yeah, well, actually, so I'm not gonna lie, the first thing that stood out to me on all of these are the 2 middle lower ones. Being from Tennessee, I'm like, why is the stripe on the hoist side instead of the fly side? It belongs on the fly side. That was the first thing I noticed. Secondly, yeah, I don't know. I think as far as in order of preference, well, not in total order. I'm not going to rank them all, but as far as preference, I don't know. I think I kind of like the blue sky one, the top right one that you have the best, followed by the Southern Cross with red stripe, bottom middle. I don't know. I expected to like the Silver Fern more than the Southern Cross, but looking at these here now, I skew toward the Southern Cross ones more. Although I will say, I think my third would be Silver Fern with red stripe, which is that bottom, well, kind of the central one. Yeah, I couldn't tell you, so the blue sky one, I haven't looked at the symbology, the symbolism of it. Is that a volcano, mountain? I don't know, other than the Southern Cross, I can't guess the symbolism.
Well, firstly, I think it's interesting that your choice, even though you say as someone from Tennessee that it's on the wrong side, you still chose the ones that remind you of your home state. So
yeah.
I think there may be that personal element there.
Yeah.
So blue sky, was inspired by actually quite a different selection of finalist flags that had a chevron on it, and they would recommend both volcanoes or mountains, because we do have a very mountainous terrain, and they are quite significant in the Māori culture. And the Southern Cross is from the current flag, and when put together, it forms a landscape that's quite intuitive, has instant resonance. I know in a lot of those other chevron designs, like, it wasn't really obvious what the chevron was representing, but by combining the stars and the chevron in this arrangement, you get something that's really instant. Like, you just know
it's infinitely better than that one that's just like the really chunky white chevron with the black, red, blue. It's way better than that to me.
I called that one the red heat flag. That one's the one that was completely mysterious and didn't really resonate.
Yeah.
This one, we've incorporated part of the current flag. Still got the red, white, and blue in the current flag and the Union Jack, as well as a lot of red, which is a very prestigious color in the Māori culture.
Right. I had a question. I guess just just as a New Zealander. So I've got it behind me here, the Tino Rangatiratonga. I'm guessing here. Well, I'm guessing there's no movement to make that the national flag because it's probably so strongly associated with Maori culture that they would rather keep it as a cultural flag. Is that like kind of what is that accurate?
That is 100% accurate.
Okay.
I actually had the honor of interviewing its last living designer, Linda Munn, and I'll be giving a presentation on that at NAMPA 58. And
I can't wait.
We touched on this point specifically, which is that during this flag competition and referendum process, the government actually flew her to Wellington and asked her specifically what she thought about making the Tino Rangatiratonga flag the official national flag of New Zealand, or adopting a flag based on it. And she was very upset at the idea because it was supposedly the flag that she had designed for her people, for her culture.
Right. Okay.
And if it becomes the national flag, then they don't have that anymore. It's been taken away from them.
Yeah.
So that's something that she was not okay with, and she did not agree with the idea.
Yeah, that makes intuitive sense to me. But yeah, I guess like that's the only thing. Like, I really like the blue sky, but I guess like if there were a way to include black in it, which I don't know if there is, so maybe that does push Silver Fern Diagonal a little bit ahead. As you've got them there as the most popular designs. Actually, what's that based off of, most popular designs? Have you done like polls and stuff for this?
I did some polls a while ago, back when the competition was going on.
Sure, yeah.
Some of those were just generally among Pixel, just some of them were among people I knew, family, friends, locals.
Okay, yeah, just curious.
Yeah, but I mean, sort of have to like. And some of these were actually done recently this year. Alan Hardy did a poll of a variety of different New Zealand flag proposals from many different sources, and I incorporated some of his results into this. This is just a synthesis of many different, polls and judgments and opinions that come over the year. So, I've had to sort of synthesize these with my own sort of personal judgment of, how to weight, like, foreigners' opinions to locals' opinions, things like that. But generally, two of the top do come up quite strongly all the time.
Gotcha. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Wanting to have the black incorporated, I think that would kind of maybe push the Silver Fern Diagonal over the line for me. But yeah,
that's one reason why it is one of the strongest designs, because that's an example of really applying that lesson of trying to appeal broadly to everyone. If you don't know this, white silver fern on black is what Ted Kay calls our second national flag. It's quite a popular and well-known design around the whole country. However, it is associated quite a lot with sporting events, sporting teams.
I was going to say the all black.
So a lot of people, well, that's one example. So a lot of people say that's just a sporting flag. That's one reason why they didn't want to consider it for the actual referendum back at the time. So what we've done for this design is we've added those vivid red and blue panels in a way, that's balanced and diagonal and aligns with the fern. So that way you're including the red, white, and black of the Maori culture, as well as the red, white, and blue from the Union Jack, and that represents both of the main founding cultures of the nation that signed the Treaty of Waitangi, which is the foundational document of our nation.
Different versions of it, but they both signed it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's some controversy about how well those two versions line up.
But yeah,
not too well. But
point taken. Regardless, yeah. No, I do like that that synthesis of the both there.
But
all right, yeah.
I will say
sorry.
I will make a comment about the solar fern diagonal, which is that Pid really objects to the idea of adding these extra colors to appeal, to add that appeal to history and culture. Because he tried to say, well, no, it's got to be simple. Just keep it white on black. That's a very effective design by itself. I'm telling you, as someone who's actually from the country, the purely black and white silver fern design, that's a real uphill battle if you want people to accept that. You do have to include other elements from history and culture in order for people to feel like, this is not just an All Blacks logo, this is not just a sporting flag, this is something that can truly represent the country. And I think you sort of hit on that when you were thinking about designs that have some reference to the Tino Rangatiratonga flag, some elements of the colors, even if it didn't have the whole thing in there.
Yeah.
I think that's just something that maybe Kid doesn't really get. Like he's speaking as an American, and he's speaking as someone who knows a lot about the design, but I'm talking about public resonance, and I think silver fern diagonal is how you would get that resonance. A pure silver fern on black, that would get some support, but I don't think that would get over the finish line.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. Like we all bring what we can to the table, and a lot of times what we can is just our own personal experience. So yeah, I mean, I again, like part of the reason that like just based on the last 5 minutes here, part of the reason I gravitated towards those ones with the stripes are because part of my personal experience has informed like, hey, isn't it nice when a flag has a nice kind of stripe down the side there? Like even if it's on the hoist, like it is it takes all kinds, as they say. So
nice red stripe with the blue field and some stars in the center.
Yeah. All right, well, dude, that was fascinating. I'm so glad we finally got to like hang out and meet up, chat about all this, like after the embargoes and everything. I mean, we could have chatted about some of this a while ago, but I really wanted to get in on a lot of that Minnesota stuff, and I think the viewers and listeners are going to go nuts over that. So, thank you so much for finding the time to sit down with us for so long today and everything. Really sincerely appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Brian, where can people find your work, follow your work, just see what you got going on in general?
Well, in some of the slides that I've shared, I put a QR code on there so you can scan that with your phone and see a bit more. My website is briancham1984.com, and that has some of my flag designs for Aotearoa, New Zealand, and some other concepts for other places like Australia. If you're interested in the Minnesota flag process, then you can come to NAVA 58, and that's where me and the rest of the design team will feature, and we will have a presentation, the full presentation, showing the full design process there.
Yeah, I would love for as many people as possible to come to NAVA 58. I will be there. As Brian mentioned, he will be there. Andrew Precker will be there, the designer of the, what ended up being the Minnesota State flag. Lots of cool people. Yeah. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. I will have, as Brian mentioned, all of his slides, including that QR code. I'll probably just put the link itself in the show notes as well. So you can get to that stuff as easily as possible. And I highly recommend that you do, because this is really fascinating stuff and really cool kind of preview of some NAVA 58 stuff as well. So as far as that goes, well, as far as following the show goes, you can find all of our links over at linktree.com/flagged4content, all spelled out. Anywhere with an @ symbol, we are at flagged for content, for like the number. As I mentioned several times, join the Discord. The Discord is where we have a lot of kind of just fun, casual conversations between a lot of us. It's where a couple of the questions on today's show came from. Follow us on Instagram. That's where a lot more came from. And I think that's pretty much it. Brian, I always plan to have a way to close the show out, but I always kind of, lose my notes or end up bumbling it somehow. So I'm just going to throw to you. Is there any kind of a closing line or any good way that you can walk us out of here today?
I think it's just time to flag off.
It is time to flag off. And with that, Brian and I will catch y'all on the fly side. Chat later. Take care, y'all. All right. Awesome. We got it. Flag for Content is proud to be sponsored by Flags for Good. Go to flagsforgood.com for more information.